The marriage certificate burned beautifully in the kitchen sink at 2:47 a.m. while Ethan Rowe watched his sleeping wife through the baby monitor app he'd installed on her phone 3 hours earlier. Marissa lay tangled in silk sheets that cost more than his monthly salary, but she wasn't in their bed. She was in room 237 at the Grandview Inn, pressed against Ray Delaney's chest like a puzzle piece that had finally found its home. Ethan's hands trembled as he held the phone, watching his world collapse in real time through a screen barely bigger than his palm. The same hands that had changed Logan's diapers, that had built their son's treehouse, that had trusted his wife with 15 years of his life. Now those hands knew exactly what betrayal looked like in high definition. The worst part wasn't the affair. It was the timestamp. The video call had started at 11:23 p.m., exactly 7 minutes after Marissa had kissed Ethan goodnight, whispering that she loved him before heading to her late PTA emergency meeting. The same meeting she'd been attending twice a week for the past 6 months. Ethan deleted the marriage certificate photo from his phone and poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon. Tomorrow he would start building the most comprehensive revenge plan his military training had ever conceived. Tonight he would mourn the man he used to be, but first he needed to check on Logan. The suspension notice felt like sandpaper between Ethan's fingers as he sat across from Principal Hawkins, whose office reeked of leather furniture and entitled authority. Logan squirmed in the chair beside him, 10 years old and confused about why defending himself from Tommy Patterson's fists had earned him 3 days at home. "Mr. Rowe, violence is never the answer," Hawkins said, not bothering to look up from his computer screen. "Logan needs to understand that we have a zero-tolerance policy." "Tommy threw the first punch," Ethan replied, keeping his voice level. "Logan has a split lip and bruised ribs. Where's Tommy's suspension?" "Tommy's father is very involved in our school programs. We've spoken to him privately about the incident." The words hung in the air like smoke. Ethan had heard about Tommy's father, Ray Delaney, PTA president, owner of 3 local businesses, and apparently the kind of man who could buy his son out of consequences. The same Ray Delaney who'd been sending Marissa flowers from the PTA committee every Friday for 2 months. "I want to see the surveillance footage," Ethan said. Hawkins finally looked up, his expression shifting from bored to annoyed. "That's not necessary. We have witness statements from other 10-year-olds who probably didn't see what happened." "Mr. Rowe, I think you're overreacting. Boys will be boys. Logan just needs to learn better conflict resolution." Ethan stood up, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across Hawkins's desk. "My son learned conflict resolution from his father, who spent 4 tours in Afghanistan. Logan knows the difference between starting a fight and finishing one. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining why my son knows how to defend himself and why I know when someone's lying to me." Hawkins' face flushed red. "This meeting is over. Logan serves his suspension, and if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with the school board." Ethan helped Logan gather his backpack, noting how his son's shoulders sagged with shame he didn't deserve. "Come on, buddy. Let's go home." As they walked to the parking lot, Logan looked up at his father with eyes that held too much disappointment for a 10-year-old. "Dad, why didn't he care that Tommy punched me first?" Ethan knelt down to Logan's level, placing both hands on his son's shoulders. "Sometimes adults make decisions that don't make sense, Logan. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Mom said I should have just walked away." Something cold settled in Ethan's chest. When did Mom say that? Last night, when she was on the phone. She said the Patterson family is really important, and I shouldn't cause trouble for them. The parking lot seemed to tilt sideways. Marissa had been on the phone discussing Logan's situation with someone, advising their son to back down from a bully whose father happened to be Ray Delaney. The same Ray Delaney who'd been funding their PTA activities. The same Ray Delaney whose wife had been conveniently out of town every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 3 months. "Dad, are you okay?" Ethan forced a smile and ruffled Logan's hair. "Yeah, buddy, I'm just thinking. How about we stop for ice cream on the way home?" But as they drove through their suburban neighborhood, past the perfectly manicured lawns and white picket fences, Ethan's mind was already 3 steps ahead. If Marissa was protecting the Patterson family, there had to be a reason. And if that reason involved Ray Delaney, then Ethan needed to know exactly how deep this rabbit hole went. That evening, while Marissa attended another emergency PTA meeting, Ethan sat in his home office researching surveillance software. He'd learned patience in the Army, how to watch, wait, and gather intelligence before striking. Those skills had kept him alive in Kandahar. Now they might save his family, or destroy it completely. The spyware took 47 seconds to install on Marissa's phone while she showered the next morning. Ethan had chosen the most expensive option: real-time GPS tracking, message monitoring, and call recording. $300 seemed like a bargain for the truth. He was making Logan's breakfast when the first notification pinged his laptop. Marissa had sent a text to someone named Ray at 6:23 a.m. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place?" Ethan's coffee mug shattered against the kitchen tile. "Dad?" Logan appeared in the doorway, already dressed for his suspension day at home. "What happened?" "Just clumsy," Ethan said, grabbing paper towels to clean up the mess. "Why don't you start on that math homework while I get this cleaned up?" Logan nodded and disappeared into the living room. Ethan finished cleaning, then checked his laptop again. Ray had responded. 7 p.m., room 237. "I'll bring the wine you like." The wine she liked. Ethan knew exactly which wine that was. A $40 bottle of Pinot Grigio that Marissa claimed to have discovered at a girls' night out last month. She'd bought 3 bottles and hidden them in the garage, saying she wanted to save them for special occasions. Apparently, infidelity qualified as special. Ethan spent the day with Logan, helping with homework and building a new shelf for his son's growing collection of model airplanes. Every notification from his laptop felt like a small explosion, but he forced himself to act normal. Logan didn't deserve to see his father fall apart, especially not on a day when the kid was already feeling knocked down by the world. At 6:45 p.m., Marissa kissed Ethan goodbye, her lips tasting like the vanilla lip gloss she only wore for special occasions. "Don't wait up," she said. "These budget meetings run late." "Budget meetings," Ethan repeated. "PTA finances are surprisingly complicated." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Oh, and I'll probably grab dinner with the committee afterward. You know how these things go." Ethan knew exactly how these things went. 20 minutes later, his laptop showed Marissa's location at the Grandview Inn. Ethan tucked Logan into bed, then drove to the hotel and parked across the street. Marissa's white Honda sat in the lot next to Ray's black BMW, both cars positioned behind the building where they couldn't be seen from the main road. Professional-level infidelity. Ethan had brought his military-grade binoculars and a telephoto camera lens he'd used for wildlife photography. Room 237 was on the second floor, and the curtains were drawn, but they hadn't bothered closing the bathroom blinds. Through the gap, Ethan could see Ray's broad shoulders and thinning hair as he poured wine into 2 glasses. Then Marissa stepped into view, wearing the red dress Ethan had bought her for their anniversary, the same dress she'd claimed was too fancy for their dinner celebration, but apparently perfect for cheating on her husband. Ethan took 43 photos before his hands started shaking too badly to hold the camera steady. He drove home in complete silence, feeling like his entire life had become a movie he didn't want to watch. Back in his office, he uploaded the photos and started a new folder on his desktop. He labeled it Evidence and began organizing everything he'd collected: text messages, GPS coordinates, photos, timestamps. 15 years of marriage reduced to a digital file folder. At 11:47 p.m., Marissa came home smelling like wine and Ray's cologne. She slipped into bed beside Ethan and whispered, "The meeting went well. We raised enough money for new playground equipment." Ethan lay still, pretending to sleep, while his wife curled up against his back. Her breathing settled into the rhythm he'd known for 15 years, and for a moment, he almost convinced himself this was all a nightmare. Then his phone buzzed with another notification. Marissa was texting Ray. "He's asleep. Thank you for tonight. Can't wait for tomorrow." Tomorrow was Thursday. Logan would be at school, back from his unfair suspension. Ethan would be at work, trusting his wife to be home alone, handling household responsibilities. Instead, she'd be in room 237, tangled up with the man who'd let his son kick up Logan with 0 consequences. Ethan stared at the ceiling until dawn, planning his next move. The breakfast diner where Marissa met her sisters every Saturday morning had the worst coffee in town, but the best view of the parking lot. Ethan sat in his truck across the street, using his telephoto lens to photograph the sisterly conspiracy unfolding over Belgian waffles and mimosas. Denise and Tara had always treated Ethan like an inconvenient accessory to their sister's life. They'd never hidden their belief that Marissa had married down, a military grunt with a high school education who worked maintenance at the water treatment plant. They'd pushed her to do better since their wedding day, and apparently Ray Delaney represented their definition of improvement. Through his camera lens, Ethan watched Denise slide a manila envelope across the table to Marissa. Tara leaned in close, speaking urgently while gesturing toward the envelope. Marissa opened it, pulled out what looked like bank statements, and nodded with satisfaction. Business papers. Ethan zoomed in further, trying to read the letterhead, but the angle was wrong. He'd have to get closer. Ethan had learned patience in Afghanistan, but he'd also learned that sometimes you had to take calculated risks to gather critical intelligence. He grabbed his gym bag from the truck bed and walked into the diner, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. The hostess seated him 3 tables away from the sisters, with a clear view of their conversation. The loan approval came through, Denise was saying. $40,000 to start the catering business. Ray's recommendation really helped with the bank. And all we had to do was provide collateral, Tara added, smirking. Good thing you and Ethan have such a nice house. Ethan's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. Collateral. They'd used his house, the house he'd inherited from his grandmother, the house he'd spent 5 years renovating with his own hands, as collateral for their business loan, without his knowledge or consent. Ray's been so helpful, Marissa said. He knows everyone in this town, the bank president, the city council, even the school board. Speaking of the school board, Denise lowered her voice. What's the plan with the Logan situation? Ray said he might have to make some moves to protect his son. Logan's suspension should be enough, Marissa replied. Ethan's upset about it, but he'll get over it. He always does. And if he doesn't, Marissa shrugged, then Ray deals with it. He's dealt with worse problems. The sisters laughed like they were discussing the weather instead of destroying a 10-year-old boy's sense of justice. Ethan forced himself to keep eating his eggs, but everything tasted like ash. His wife had conspired with her sisters to use his property as collateral for their business, while her lover manipulated the school system to punish Logan for defending himself. This wasn't just an affair. It was a coordinated attack on his entire family. Ethan left a 20 on the table and walked out before he did something that would compromise his mission. Back in his truck, he called his old army buddy Frank, who'd become a private investigator after his discharge. I need a favor, Ethan said when Frank answered. What kind of favor? The kind that stays between us. Frank was quiet for a moment. You okay, brother? Not even close. Can you meet me tonight? Roger that. Same place as always? Yeah. And Frank, bring your laptop? Frank's basement looked like a cross between a computer lab and a military bunker. 3 monitors displayed scrolling code while a police scanner crackled in the background. Frank had always been the tech genius of their unit, the guy who could hack enemy communications and disappear their digital footprints. Civilian life had given him more sophisticated tools and fewer legal restrictions. Jesus Christ, Ethan, Frank said, scrolling through the evidence folder on his laptop. How long has this been going on? Best guess, about a year. Maybe longer. Frank pulled up Ray Delaney's public records, business licenses, property ownership, tax filings. This guy's connected, real connected. He's got holdings in 3 counties, sits on 2 school boards, and his brother-in-law is a district judge. Can you dig deeper? Brother, I can dig so deep I'll hit China. Give me 6 hours and I'll know what brand of toothpaste this a-hole uses. Frank cracked his knuckles. But I gotta ask, what's the end game here? You gathering evidence for a divorce lawyer or something else? Ethan stared at the wall of monitors, watching his wife's text messages scroll past in real time. She was currently at yoga class, or at least, that's what she'd told him. The GPS showed her location at the Grandview Inn. Something else, Ethan said. How much else? Remember Baghdad, when those contractors were selling our supply routes to the insurgents? Frank nodded. You exposed the whole network. Got them court-martialed and sent to Leavenworth. Same principle. Find the network, map the connections, then take it down piece by piece. Ethan, those were enemy combatants. This is your wife. Is it? Ethan pulled up the photos from the diner. She's used my house as collateral without my knowledge. She's protecting the man whose son attacked Logan. She's lying to my face every single day while her sisters laugh about it over mimosas. Frank studied the photos, his expression growing darker. The house thing is wire fraud if she forged your signature. The school thing is corruption if Ray's bribing officials. And the infidelity. He shook his head. In a no-fault state, that doesn't matter legally, but it sure as hell matters personally. Can you prove the corruption? Give me access to Ray's email, and I can prove whatever you want. Ethan leaned back in his chair, thinking, oh, what would you need? Physical access to his computer for about 10 minutes, or his phone if he's sloppy about security. He's sloppy about everything. Leave that to me. Frank pulled up a new window, his fingers flying across the keyboard. I'm setting up a secure server for evidence storage. Everything we collect gets backed up in 3 locations, encrypted and timestamped. If this goes to court, we want bulletproof documentation. It's not going to court. Then what's it going to? Ethan looked at his friend, remembering all the battles they'd fought together, all the times Frank had watched his back in hostile territory. It's going to be justice. Over the next 4 hours, Frank built a digital war room that would have impressed the NSA. Remote access to Marissa's phone, background checks on everyone in her social circle, financial records for Ray's businesses, and a surveillance network that could track their movements in real time. Your wife's not just cheating, Frank said around midnight, pulling up a complex flowchart on his main monitor. She's part of a whole ecosystem. Ray's the center, but there are tentacles everywhere. The school board, the city council, the bank where they got the loan. This guy's built himself a little empire. Empires fall, Ethan said. Yeah, but they usually take a lot of innocent people with them. You sure you want to do this? Ethan thought about Logan, suspended from school for defending himself. He thought about his house being used as collateral for his wife's sister's business venture. He thought about Marissa lying beside him every night, pretending to love him while planning her future with another man. I'm sure. Then we start tomorrow. I'll need you to get me access to Ray's phone. Already have a plan for that. Frank grinned, and for a moment, they were back in Afghanistan, planning missions that would either succeed brilliantly or get them eliminated. Just like old times. Just like old times, Ethan agreed. But this time the enemy wasn't wearing a uniform. The enemy was sleeping in his bed. The PTA fundraiser at Riverside Community Center buzzed with suburban energy parents discussing soccer schedules, while their children ran wild around the gymnasium. Ethan stood near the raffle table holding a cup of weak coffee and watching Ray Delaney work the crowd like a politician running for mayor. Ray had the kind of presence that commanded attention. Tall, silver-haired, with the confident smile of a man who'd never been told no. He wore a custom suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly salary, and he moved through the crowd with the easy grace of someone who owned the room. Marissa stood beside him, helping organize the silent auction items. She wore the blue dress Ethan had complimented that morning, and she glowed with the kind of happiness that came from being exactly where she wanted to be. They weren't touching, but their body language screamed closeness, the way she leaned in to hear him speak, how he placed his hand on the small of her back when guiding her through the crowd. Ethan had seen enough. He walked over to the basketball court where Logan was playing with other kids from his class. Tommy Patterson was notably absent. Apparently, 3-day suspensions didn't apply to the PTA president's family. Hey, Dad. Logan ran over, his face flushed with exercise and genuine happiness. Mrs. Chen said I could help with the cakewalk later. That sounds great, buddy. Ethan knelt down to Logan's level. I need to talk to some people about your school situation. Will you be okay here for a little while? Logan nodded eagerly. Can I spend my allowance money on raffle tickets? Go for it. Just save some for later. Ethan ruffled his son's hair, then walked back toward the main crowd. Ray was standing alone now, checking his phone while Marissa arranged auction items on a nearby table. Perfect. Mr. Delaney? Ethan approached with his most disarming smile. I'm Ethan Rowe, Logan's father. I wanted to thank you personally for all your work with the PTA. Ray looked up from his phone, his expression shifting from distracted to politician-friendly. Of course, Logan's a great kid. How's he doing after that little incident at school? He's resilient, kids bounce back. Ethan extended his hand. I have to say, this fundraiser is impressive. You must have put a lot of work into organizing it. Ray shook his hand, his grip firm and confident. Community involvement is important to me. I believe in giving back. I can see that. Marissa's told me so much about your dedication to the school programs. Something flickered in Ray's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or concern. Marissa's been very helpful with the planning committee. She speaks highly of you, too. Says you're the kind of leader this community needs. Ray's phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced at it, then back at Ethan. Well, I appreciate that. If you'll excuse me, I need to make a quick call. Of course. Don't let me keep you. Ray walked toward the exit, already dialing. Ethan waited 30 seconds, then followed him outside. Ray stood near his BMW, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, urgent tones. Told you he doesn't suspect anything. Yes, I'm sure. Look, Marissa handles him. I handle the school board. What? No, absolutely not. We stick to the plan. Ethan circled around to the back of the building, using the shadows to get closer. Ray had moved to the far side of his car, still talking. The loan goes through next week, then we're set. Denise and Tara get their business, Marissa gets her freedom, and I get what I want. No, he's not smart enough to figure it out. Trust me, I've dealt with his type before. Ethan felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. His type. Ray was talking about him like he was a problem to be managed, a pest to be controlled. Ray ended the call and started to head back inside. Ethan stepped out of the shadows. "Nice night," Ethan said casually. Ray spun around, startled. "Jesus, you scared me. What are you doing out here?" "Getting some air. It's stuffy inside." Ethan gestured toward the building. "Thought I heard you on the phone. Hope everything's okay." "Just business. You know how it is." "Actually, I don't. What kind of business are you in, exactly?" Ray's smile became more fixed. "Real estate development? Commercial properties, mostly. Sounds lucrative. Must be nice to have that kind of financial freedom." "Hard work pays off." "I'm sure it does." Ethan stepped closer. "Speaking of hard work, I wanted to ask you about Logan's situation at school. Principal Hawkins mentioned you were very involved in resolving the incident. I try to stay informed about school issues. Part of being PTA president." "Of course. It's just interesting that Tommy Patterson didn't receive any disciplinary action, even though multiple witnesses saw him throw the first punch." Ray's expression hardened slightly. "I'm sure the school handled it appropriately. I'm sure they did exactly what you told them to do." The two men stared at each other across the parking lot. Ray's politician mask was slipping, revealing something uglier underneath. "I think you're misunderstanding the situation," Ray said carefully. "Am I? Because from where I stand, it looks like you used your influence to protect your friend's son while my kid got punished for defending himself. Your son was involved in a fight. Actions have consequences." "Yeah, they do." Ethan's voice dropped to just above a whisper. "And sometimes those consequences come when you least expect them." Ray took a step back. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm just saying that hard work pays off, in all kinds of ways." Ethan turned and walked back toward the building, leaving Ray standing alone beside his BMW. He could feel the man's eyes on his back, could practically hear the gears turning in Ray's head. Good. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him make mistakes. Frank's basement had become mission control. 3 monitors displayed real-time surveillance feeds, while a 4th showed the financial records they'd pulled from Ray's email. The man had been spectacularly careless with digital security. His password was literally Ray Delaney1, with variations for different accounts. "This is bigger than we thought," Frank said, pulling up a spreadsheet. "Ray's not just cheating with your wife, he's running a whole corruption network. Look at this." The screen showed a complex web of financial transfers. Ray's development company had received 3 municipal contracts in the past year, all approved by a city council that included 2 members who'd received consulting fees from Ray's other businesses. "It's pay to play," Ethan said. "He buys influence, then uses it to get more contracts. Gets better. The school board president? His wife works for Ray's real estate company. The bank president who approved your wife's sister's loan? Ray's holding the mortgage on his house." Ethan studied the connections, seeing the pattern emerge. "It's like a spider web. Everything connects back to Ray. And your wife's right in the center of it. Look at this." Frank pulled up a series of text messages between Marissa and Ray. The content was explicit enough to make Ethan's stomach turn, but it was the business discussions that really caught his attention. "She's not just sleeping with him," Frank continued. "She's helping him identify targets. See this conversation from last month? She's telling him about your neighbor's financial problems, suggesting Ray approach him about selling his property." Ethan read the messages, feeling something die inside him. Marissa wasn't just betraying their marriage. She was betraying their entire community, helping Ray identify vulnerable families he could exploit. "There's more," Frank said grimly. "The loan her sisters got, it's not legitimate. Ray's bank buddy approved it based on falsified income statements. When it comes due, they'll default, and Ray will foreclose on your house. My house that Marissa put up as collateral without my knowledge." "Exactly. It's a long con, brother. Ray gets the property for pennies on the dollar. Your wife gets her freedom and a nice settlement, and you get left with nothing." Ethan stood up and walked to the small window that looked out onto Frank's backyard. A year ago, his biggest worry had been whether Logan would make the baseball team. Now he was discovering that his entire life had been orchestrated by strangers who saw him as nothing more than a mark to be fleeced. "How long do we have?" he asked. The loan comes due in 6 weeks. After that, they can start foreclosure proceedings. Then we move now. Frank cracked his knuckles. What's the plan? Ethan turned back to the monitors, studying the web of corruption displayed across the screens. Every connection, every relationship, every secret Ray thought he was keeping safe. We burn it all down, Ethan said. Every connection, every scheme, every lie. We expose everything, and we do it in a way that destroys all of them simultaneously. That's a lot of moving parts, brother. One mistake, and they'll know we're coming. Then we don't make mistakes. Frank nodded slowly. I'll need a few days to set everything up. Create fake identities for the evidence leaks, establish secure communication channels, coordinate timing. Do it. And Frank, when this goes down, I want Marissa to watch it all happen. I want her to see exactly what she helped destroy. Roger that. But Ethan, once we pull this trigger, there's no going back. Your marriage is over, your wife goes to prison, and Logan loses his mother. Ethan thought about his son suspended from school for defending himself. He thought about his house being used as collateral without his knowledge. He thought about the woman he loved for 15 years, lying beside him every night while planning his destruction. Logan's already lost his mother, Ethan said. He just doesn't know it yet. The school board meeting was held in the cramped conference room behind the main office with fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered overhead. Ethan sat in the back row, wearing his only suit and carrying a manila folder that contained enough evidence to destroy 3 careers and send 2 people to federal prison. Ray sat at the front table with the other board members, looking confident and relaxed. He'd nodded politely when Ethan entered, probably assuming this was just another parent complaint that could be easily dismissed. Principal Hawkins sat beside Ray, occasionally whispering in his ear and glancing nervously toward Ethan. Good. Let them wonder what he knew. The chair recognizes Mr. Rowe, said the board president, a thin woman with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Ethan stood up, his heart hammering against his ribs. Thank you. I'm here to discuss the disciplinary action taken against my son, Logan Rowe, following an incident with Tommy Patterson. Mr. Rowe, Ray interrupted, the board has already reviewed this matter. The school's decision stands. I'm not here to appeal the decision, Ethan said calmly. I'm here to provide additional context that I believe the board should consider. He opened his folder and pulled out the first document, a printout of text messages between Principal Hawkins and Ray, discussing how to handle the Rowe situation before Logan's disciplinary hearing had even taken place. These messages were exchanged 2 days before my son's hearing, Ethan continued. They show that the outcome was predetermined, not based on the facts of the incident. The room went dead silent. Ray's face had gone pale, while Hawkins looked like he was going to be sick. Mr. Rowe, where did you obtain these private communications? The board president asked. That's not relevant. What's relevant is that they show a pattern of corruption that extends far beyond my son's case. Ethan pulled out the next document, bank records, showing a $25,000 payment from Ray's development company to Hawkins's personal account, dated 3 days after the school board had approved a construction contract for Ray's company. This payment was made with no corresponding invoice or contract, Ethan said. It appears to be a bribe, paid in exchange for Principal Hawkins's influence in securing the contract. This is preposterous, Ray said, standing up. These documents could be fabricated. Anyone can create fake bank records. You're right, Ethan agreed. Which is why I've provided the board with authentication from 3 independent forensic accountants, along with sworn affidavits from 2 bank employees who processed the transactions. He distributed copies of the affidavits to each board member. Ray sat down heavily, his confident demeanor cracking. There's more, Ethan continued. Over the past 18 months, Mr. Delaney has used his position on this board to benefit his business interests in ways that violate state ethics laws and federal anti-corruption statutes. The next 20 minutes were a masterclass in systematic destruction. Ethan presented evidence of bid rigging, kickbacks, and influence peddling. He showed how Ray had used his knowledge of planned school improvements to buy properties that would increase in value. He documented payments to board members' family members for consulting work that never existed. By the time he finished, 3 board members had resigned on the spot, and the remaining 2 were discussing criminal referrals. Mr. Delaney, Mr. Hawkins, the board president said, her voice shaking. You're both suspended from your positions pending a full investigation. This meeting is adjourned. Ray stood up slowly, his face twisted with rage. He walked over to Ethan as the room emptied. You have no idea what you've just done, Ray said quietly. I know exactly what I've done, Ethan replied. I've given you a taste of what's coming. This isn't over. You're right. It's just getting started. Ray stormed out, leaving Ethan alone in the conference room. He gathered his papers and walked to his truck, knowing that Frank was already executing the next phase of their plan. By morning, Ray's world would start collapsing in earnest. The local newspaper's front page hit doorsteps at 6 a.m. with a headline that made coffee cups rattle across suburbia. PTA president caught in corruption scandal. Below it, a smaller headline read, School board member received kickbacks for contracts. Ethan read the article while drinking his morning coffee, savoring every word. Frank had done excellent work, feeding the information to 3 different reporters simultaneously to ensure maximum coverage. The story included quotes from anonymous sources close to the investigation and featured several of the more damning documents from Ethan's evidence file. Marissa came downstairs at 7:15, already dressed and checking her phone frantically. Have you seen the news? She asked, her voice tight with panic. About the school board thing? Yeah, crazy stuff. Ethan kept his voice casual. Looks like that Ray guy you've been working with is in some serious trouble. It's all lies, Marissa said quickly. Ray's a good man. He's dedicated his life to helping this community. Sounds like he's been helping himself to community funds. Marissa's phone buzzed with another call. She glanced at the screen, probably Ray, and declined it. I need to go. The PTA is calling an emergency meeting. To distance themselves from Ray? To support him? This is obviously a political hit job. Ethan watched his wife grab her purse and head for the door, marveling at her loyalty to a man who was about to destroy her life. She had no idea that the emergency PTA meeting was about to become her personal nightmare. 20 minutes after Marissa left, Ethan's phone rang. Frank's voice crackled through the speaker. Package delivered. Phase 2 is active. Copy that. How's our timeline? Right on schedule. The Feds should be kicking down doors by noon. Ethan hung up and checked on Logan, who was eating cereal and reading a comic book, blissfully unaware that his mother's world was about to implode. At 11:47 a.m., federal agents raided Ray's office, his home, and the Grandview Inn, seizing computers, financial records, and surveillance equipment. By noon, Ray was in federal custody, charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Principal Hawkins was arrested at the school, led away in handcuffs while students watched from classroom windows. But Ethan's masterpiece was just beginning. Denise and Tara's catering business occupied a small storefront in the downtown district, wedged between a yoga studio and a vintage clothing shop. Ethan parked across the street at 2 p.m., watching through his telephoto lens as the sisters frantically loaded boxes into their cars. They'd gotten the call an hour ago. Their business loan had been called in immediately due to irregularities in the application process. The bank wanted full payment within 72 hours, or they'd begin foreclosure proceedings on the collateral property, Ethan's house. He walked into the shop, triggering a bell that made both sisters look up from their packing. Their faces went through a series of expressions, surprise, fear, and finally guilty defiance. Ethan, Denise said, straightening up and trying to look confident. What are you doing here? I wanted to see the business my house is paying for. Tara dropped the box she was holding. What are you talking about? The loan application you filed 6 weeks ago. The one that lists my property as collateral without my knowledge or consent. The sisters exchanged glances. Denise cleared her throat. Marissa said you were okay with it. Marissa forged my signature. That makes all 3 of you guilty of wire fraud. You can't prove that, Tara said, but her voice was shaking. Ethan pulled out his phone and played a recording. Marissa's voice filled the small shop. Don't worry about Ethan's signature. I can handle that part. He never reads the financial papers anyway. The recording was from last month's diner meeting. Frank had enhanced the audio quality until every word was crystal clear. The FBI has the original loan documents, Ethan continued. Their handwriting experts will have no trouble proving the signature was forged. Wire fraud carries a federal sentence of up to 20 years. Denise sat down heavily on a folding chair. What do you want? I want you to understand something. For 15 years, you've treated me like I wasn't good enough for your sister. You've mocked my job, my education, my family background. You've made it clear that you thought Marissa could do better. Ethan, please. I'm not finished. His voice cut through her plea like ice. You convinced your sister to betray our marriage, to steal from our family, to destroy our son's sense of security. You thought I was too stupid to figure it out. Tara was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. We didn't mean for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You planned every step of this. The affair, the loan, the property grab. You thought you were so much smarter than the dumb grunt who married your sister. Ethan pulled out a second document, a full accounting of their business finances, including receipts, invoices, and bank statements that Frank had obtained through less than legal means. Your catering business has been operating at a loss since day one, he continued. You've been using the loan money to fund your personal expenses, designer clothes, spa treatments, luxury vacations. The business was just a front to steal my property. Denise stood up, anger replacing her fear. You think you're so smart now? You destroyed Ray. You'll probably send us to prison. But what about Marissa? She's still your wife. She's still Logan's mother. Not for much longer. She loves you, Ethan. Despite everything, she still loves you. Ethan laughed, a sound devoid of humor. She loves the idea of me, the loyal husband who works hard and doesn't ask questions, the convenient father who will raise her son while she builds a new life with a richer man. That's not true. Your sister has been planning to leave me for 8 months. She's already got an apartment picked out, already consulted a divorce lawyer. She was just waiting for Ray to secure his development deal, so they'd have enough money to buy out my interest in the house. The sisters stared at him in shock. Clearly, Marissa hadn't shared all the details of her exit strategy. The difference between Marissa and you two, Ethan continued, is that she's smart enough to know when she's knocking. You're still fighting a war that ended the moment I decided to destroy you. He walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. You have 60 hours to return every penny you stole, plus interest. If the money isn't in my account by Thursday, I turn over everything I have to the federal prosecutors. Your choice. Ethan left them sobbing in their failed business, surrounded by boxes of dreams that would never come true. Marissa was waiting for him when he got home, sitting at their kitchen table with divorce papers spread in front of her. She'd changed clothes since morning. Gone was the panic-stricken woman who'd rushed off to defend Ray. In her place sat someone Ethan barely recognized, cold and calculating. Hello, husband, she said without looking up. Hello, wife. I suppose you think you're very clever. Ethan poured himself a glass of water and sat across from her. I think I'm very thorough. Ray's been arrested. Denise and Tara are facing federal charges. The PTA has suspended me pending investigation. She finally looked up, her eyes empty of the warmth he'd once loved. Very thorough indeed. Where's Logan? At your mother's house. I thought we should have privacy for this conversation. Conversation about what? Marissa slid a document across the table. Divorce papers. I'm filing for irreconcilable differences. You can keep the house since you're so attached to it. I just want out. Ethan glanced at the papers without touching them. No custody request for Logan. Joint custody. Weekends and holidays. That's generous of you. I'm not vindictive, Ethan, despite what you might think. He studied his wife's face, looking for any trace of the woman he'd married. When did you stop loving me? The question seemed to catch her off guard. For a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw something that might have been regret. I don't know, she said quietly. Maybe I never did. Not the way you deserved. Then why did you marry me? Because you were safe. You were kind and stable, and you loved me completely. After my father left, after watching my mother struggle, I thought that was enough. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't. She leaned back in her chair. Ray offered me something different. Excitement, passion, a life bigger than this house and this town. Ray offered you money. That too. Ethan had to admire her honesty, even if it felt like being stabbed with an icicle. And Logan? What did you think would happen to him in this bigger life? Logan would have been fine. Children are resilient. He would have adapted. Like he adapted to being suspended for defending himself? Marissa's jaw tightened. That was unavoidable. Ray's son needed protection, and Logan was in the way. Logan is your son. Logan is 10 years old. Tommy Patterson's future was worth more than Logan's temporary discomfort. Ethan stared at her, finally understanding the depth of her betrayal. She hadn't just cheated on their marriage, she'd abandoned their child for social advancement. You're right, he said finally. This conversation was necessary. Good. Then you'll sign the papers? No. Marissa frowned. Ethan, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We both know this marriage is over. The marriage ended the first time you slept with Ray, but the paperwork, that's gonna wait. Wait for what? For your arraignment. The color drained from Marissa's face. What arraignment? Ethan pulled out his phone and played another recording. This one from her conversation with Denise and Tara at the diner 3 weeks ago. I've got the bank president eating out of my hand, Marissa's voice said clearly. Ray introduced us at the country club, and now he thinks I'm interested in a private loan for my own business. He has no idea I'm just gathering information about his security protocols. Security protocols for what? Tara's voice asked. For when we need to move larger amounts of money. Ray's development deals are about to get much bigger, and we need a bank president who won't ask uncomfortable questions. The recording continued for another 2 minutes, detailing Marissa's role in Ray's money laundering operation. She'd been more than just a mistress. She'd been an active participant in the corruption network. Wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy, Ethan said, turning off the recording. The federal prosecutors are very interested in your level of involvement. Marissa sat in stunned silence, her divorce papers forgotten. You have one chance, Ethan continued. Full cooperation with the investigation. Testify against Ray and everyone else involved. Take whatever plea deal they offer you. And if I don't? Then you go to trial, and I testify about everything I know. The jury hears about your affair, your scheme to steal my house, your willingness to sacrifice Logan for Ray's son. They see you for exactly what you are. You would do that? Destroy the mother of your child? You already destroyed yourself. I'm just deciding whether to help you pick up the pieces. Marissa stared at him for a long moment, seeing perhaps for the first time the man she'd underestimated for 15 years. What happens to Logan? She asked quietly. Logan stays with me. You can write to him from prison if you want. Maybe in 10 years, when you get out, he'll be ready to have a relationship with you again. And if I cooperate? If I testify? Then maybe you get 5 years instead of 20. Maybe you're out in time to attend his high school graduation. 3 days later, at 11:30 p.m., 2 men kicked in Ethan's front door. Ethan was in his basement workshop, installing a security system that Frank had designed when he heard the wood splinter upstairs. Logan was at his grandmother's house for the week, thank God. Ethan grabbed the baseball bat he kept near his workbench and killed the basement lights. Heavy footsteps moved across the floor above him. 2 sets, moving with the careful rhythm of professionals. They weren't burglars looking for easy cash. They were here for a specific purpose. Ethan's phone vibrated with a text message. Get out, now. F. Frank's surveillance network had picked up their arrival. Ethan texted back. Where? Back door. Car and alley, go. Ethan moved to the basement's exterior entrance, a set of concrete steps that led to his backyard. He could hear the men upstairs searching room by room, opening closets and checking behind furniture. They were looking for him, or for evidence, or both. The backyard was dark except for a neighbor's security light 50 yards away. Ethan stayed low, moving along the fence line toward the alley, where Frank had promised a car would be waiting. Behind him, the house lit up as the searchers turned on every light. They were being systematic about it, which meant they had time. Which meant they weren't worried about neighbors calling the police. Which meant they had official sanction for whatever they were doing. Ethan reached the alley and found Frank's old Honda Civic with the engine running. He dove into the passenger seat just as the men emerged from his house. Drive, Ethan said. Frank gunned the engine, tires squealing as they shot down the alley. In the rearview mirror, Ethan saw the 2 men running toward a black SUV parked at the end of the block. Who were they? Frank asked, taking a hard right onto the main street. Federal? Local? Ray's people? Ray's in federal custody. Ray has friends who aren't. The SUV appeared behind them, gaining ground despite Frank's aggressive driving. Frank took another right, then a left, trying to lose them in the suburban maze. They're not giving up, Ethan said. Neither are we. Frank's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He answered it on speaker without checking the number. Frank! It was Marissa's voice, shaking with terror. They took Logan. Ethan's world tilted sideways. What? 2 men came to your mother's house an hour ago. They had badges, said they were federal marshals. They took Logan into protective custody. Protective custody from what? From you. They said you were dangerous, that you'd threatened multiple federal witnesses. Frank cursed and took another hard turn. The SUV stayed with them, its headlights growing larger in the mirror. Where did they take him? Ethan demanded. I don't know. Your mother tried to call the marshal's office, but they said they had no record of any protective custody order. Because there isn't one, Frank said grimly. Someone's using fake badges to grab your kid. Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. Answer it, Frank said. Hello? Mr. Rowe. The voice was professionally calm with a slight southern accent. I believe we have something that belongs to you. Where is my son? Safe for now. He's a bright boy. Asks a lot of questions. What do you want? All copies of the evidence you've collected. Digital files, physical documents, recordings, photographs, everything. And in exchange, your son comes home unharmed and you forget everything you think you know about Mr. Delaney's business operations. Ethan looked at Frank, who was shaking his head violently while fighting to keep the SUV from catching them. I need proof that Logan's okay, Ethan said. Hold on. There was a moment of muffled conversation. Then Logan's voice came through the phone. Dad, I'm okay, but these men said you're in trouble. They said I have to stay with them until you fix things. Logan, listen to me carefully. Are you hurt? No, but I'm scared. When can I come home? Soon, buddy. Very soon, I promise. The southern voice came back on the line. You have 6 hours. Bring everything to the old Riverside quarry. Come alone, or the boy disappears permanently. The line went dead. Frank pulled into an abandoned gas station and killed the engine. The SUV drove past without slowing, apparently satisfied that their message had been delivered. They have Logan, Ethan said, his voice hollow. I heard. I have to give them what they want. Brother, if you give them everything, Logan's still dead. You know too much, and now he's seen their faces. Ethan stared out at the empty parking lot, his mind racing through possibilities. Then we don't give them everything. What's the play? We give them enough to make them think they've won. Meanwhile, you upload everything to every news outlet in the state. That puts Logan at risk. Logan's already at risk. These people eliminated Ray in federal custody 3 hours ago. Made it look like self-destruction. Frank's phone buzzed with a news alert. Ray Delaney had been found dead in his cell, apparently having hanged himself with bedsheets. The authorities were calling it a tragic end to a man overwhelmed by his crimes. Jesus, Frank whispered. They're cleaning house, Ethan said. Ray, me, Logan, anyone who knows about the corruption network. We're all loose ends. Then what's the plan? Ethan looked at his oldest friend, the man who'd saved his life a dozen times in Afghanistan. We go to war. The Riverside quarry had been abandoned for 20 years, leaving behind a man-made crater filled with dark water and surrounded by industrial equipment, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Ethan parked his truck at the gate and walked in on foot, carrying a duffel bag filled with duplicate evidence files and a wireless transmitter that would broadcast everything to Frank's secure server. 3 men waited by the water's edge. 2 were the same ones who'd broken into his house. Big, professional, armed. The 3rd was older, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in the industrial wasteland. Logan sat on a concrete barrier 20 feet away, watched by a 4th man with a rifle. Mr. Rowe, the suited man called out, thank you for coming. I'm sorry we had to meet under these circumstances. Where's my son? Safe, as promised. Did you bring what we discussed? Ethan held up the duffel bag. Everything. Digital files, documents, recordings, all of it. Excellent. May I? Ethan tossed the bag to one of the armed men, who unzipped it and began examining the contents. USB drives, printed documents, CD-ROMs, a complete archive of evidence that had taken weeks to compile. This appears to be everything, the suited man said after a few minutes. Your cooperation is appreciated. Now release my son. Of course, but first we need to discuss your future. What about it? Mr. Delaney's unfortunate self-destruction has created certain complications. There may be additional investigations, more questions asked. We need to ensure that you won't be tempted to share any additional information that might come to light. Ethan kept his expression neutral. I've given you everything I have. I'm sure you have. But memories can be unreliable, and sometimes people remember details they thought they'd forgotten. The suited man nodded to one of his employees, who pulled out a pistol and pointed it at Logan. The simplest solution, the man continued, is to ensure that no one will be asking you any more questions. You said Logan would be safe if I cooperated. I said he'd be safe for now. Unfortunately, circumstances have changed. Ethan heard Frank's voice in his earpiece, barely audible. Sniper in position. Give the signal. Ethan raised his hand to scratch his neck, the predetermined signal for Frank to take the shot. A second later, the man guarding Logan collapsed with a bullet through his chest. Chaos erupted around the quarry. The two men by the water spun toward the rifle shot, giving Ethan the opening he needed. He tackled the nearest one, grappling for his weapon, while Logan ran toward the tree line where Frank was hidden. The suited man was shouting orders, but his voice was drowned out by fire shot as Frank engaged the remaining targets from his elevated position. Ethan wrestled the pistol away from his opponent and put 2 bullets in his chest. The third man was trying to flank Frank's position when Ethan shot him in the back. The suited man stood alone by the water, his hands raised in surrender. Mr. Rowe, please, we can work something out. We already worked something out, Ethan said, walking toward him. You took my son. I was following orders. I'm just middle management. Whose orders? People you don't want to meet. People who can make your life very difficult if you continue down this path. Ethan stopped 5 feet away, his pistol pointed at the man's chest. My life's already difficult. Someone destroyed my marriage, corrupted my son's school, and tried to steal my house. Then they abducted my boy. That wasn't personal. It was just business. It became personal when you involved Logan. The man's eyes darted toward the tree line, probably hoping Frank would provide some kind of distraction. If you eliminate me, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. My employers don't forgive and they don't forget. Your employers are about to have bigger problems. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Frank. Upload complete. Every news outlet in 3 states just got the full archive. You see, the evidence I gave you was just copies, Ethan continued. The originals are being broadcast to every newspaper, TV station, and federal agency as we speak. By morning, everyone will know about the corruption network. The bribes, the money laundering, the homicide of Ray Delaney in federal custody. The suited man's face went pale. You don't understand what you've done. I understand exactly what I've done. I've ended this. Ethan pulled the trigger. The media explosion lasted for 3 weeks. Every day brought new revelations about the corruption network that had operated throughout the county for nearly a decade. Federal investigators arrested 17 people, including 2 city council members, a bank president, and 3 school board officials. Marissa cooperated fully with the investigation, providing testimony that helped prosecutors understand the scope of Ray's operation. In exchange for her cooperation, she received a 5-year sentence for wire fraud and money laundering. Denise and Tara got 3 years each. Logan stayed with Ethan throughout the trials, attending therapy sessions to help process everything that had happened. The abduction had been traumatic, but Logan was resilient in the way that children often are. He asked questions, cried when he needed to, and slowly began to trust that his father would keep him safe. Will Mom be okay in prison? Logan asked one evening while they were building a new model airplane. She'll be fine, Ethan said. Prison isn't fun, but it's not as scary as movies make it look. She'll have books to read, classes to take, maybe even a job that helps her feel useful. Will she still be my mom when she gets out? It was the question Ethan had been dreading. She'll always be your mom, Logan. But things will be different. She made some very bad choices, and those choices have consequences. Like when I got suspended for fighting Tommy? Exactly like that, but much more serious. Logan nodded thoughtfully. I'm mad at her for lying to us. But I still love her. That's okay. You can love someone and still be angry with them. Those feelings don't cancel each other out. 6 months later, Ethan and Logan moved to a small house across town. The old house held too many memories, and they both needed a fresh start. Ethan kept his job at the water treatment plant, but he also started a consulting business helping other people investigate fraud and corruption. His military skills and experience with Ray's network made him surprisingly effective at uncovering financial crimes. Frank became his business partner, handling the technical side while Ethan dealt with clients. They called their company Rowe Investigations, and within a year, they had more business than they could handle.